Hey everyone, it's Olivia. Welcome back to the channel. Since moving here, I've become obsessed with Rightmove. It's like Zillow, but for nosy people. And I've started noticing these phantom features in older houses. Things that used to be standard, everyday genius inventions that just vanished. And coming from the US, where we tend to just tear everything down and build it out of drywall and hope, looking at these older British features has blown my mind. They weren't just quirky, they were brilliant. They were eco-friendly before climate change was a hashtag, and they solved problems I didn't even know existed. I've dug into the history books, I've annoyed my British neighbours with a million questions, and I have compiled a list of 15 absolute genius British home features that we need to bring back immediately. Let's get into it. Number 1, the airing cupboard. Okay, first off, in the US, we have linen closets. You put your towels in there, you shut the door, and that's it. It's just a shelf. But the British? Oh no, the British invented a life support system for your towels. It's called the airing cupboard. When I first moved into my rental, I opened this cupboard and got hit with this wave of heat. I thought the house was on fire. It turns out this is arguably the smartest piece of passive energy engineering in domestic history. Before the days of combi boilers, which is what most modern homes have now, British houses had a hot water tank, usually copper, filled with water heated by the boiler. Now, copper is a conductor. Even with insulation, heat escapes. In America, we call that inefficiency. In Britain, in the 1950s and 60s, they looked at that leaking heat and said, free dryer. They built slatted wooden shelves around the tank. You put your towels, your bed sheets, your slightly damp jumpers in there, and the ambient heat from the tank keeps them bone dry and toasty warm. Do you know what it's like to step out of a shower in a drafty British winter and grab a towel that has been passively heated to 80 degrees? It is a religious experience. But it's gone. Why? Because of the combi boiler revolution in the 90s and 2000s? These new boilers heat water on demand, so there's no tank. No tank means no waste heat. No waste heat means the airing cupboard just becomes a cold, sad closet. It's a tragedy. We traded warm socks for space efficiency, and I'm not sure it was worth it. Number 2, the serving hatch. I was watching some old British sitcoms the other day for research, obviously, and I kept seeing this little sliding door in the wall between the kitchen and the dining room. It's called a serving hatch. Now hear me out. In the US, and increasingly here in the UK, we are obsessed with open plan. We want to knock down every wall until we are living in a warehouse. But the serving hatch was the perfect compromise, and I think we destroyed it too soon. Historically, this comes from a time when you didn't want to see the mess of the kitchen while you were eating. In the 1970s, the hostess, usually the mum, let's be real, wanted to be part of the conversation but didn't want guests staring at the dirty pans. So you have this little window, you slide it open, pass the casserole through, and slide it shut. Boom! The smell of boiling cabbage stays in the kitchen. The dinner party continues undisturbed. It wasn't just about hiding mess, it was about thermodynamics. If you have an open plan house, heat goes everywhere. With a hatch, you keep the kitchen warm and the dining room separate. Plus, it stopped the dog from running into the kitchen while you were cooking. We literally paid thousands of pounds in the 90s to brick these up, and now people are realizing that open plan living means your sofa smells like onions every time you cook. The serving hatch was social boundaries manifested in architecture, and I kind of miss it. Number 3, the coal bunker. Okay, this one is wild to me. Walking around the back of some older terraces here, I saw these concrete or brick boxes attached to the walls. They look like little tombs. I asked my neighbor and she said, oh, that's the coal bunker. In the US, unless you were living in a cabin in 1850, we don't really have this cultural memory of the coal man. But up until the mid-century, almost every British home was heated by coal fires. You didn't just turn a dial, you had to physically shovel fuel. The bunker was genius because it had a hatch on the top and a sliding door at the bottom. The coal man would come, usually covered in soot, literal Mary Poppins vibes, dump the sacks in the top, and gravity would feed the coal to the bottom. You'd go out with your coal scuttle, shovel it up, and bring it in. This feature didn't vanish because of fashion, it vanished because of the law. The Clean Air Acts of 1956 and 1968 were huge deals here. London used to have pea super smogs where you couldn't see your hand in front of your face because of all the coal fires. The government basically banned burning raw coal in cities. Overnight, the coal bunker became obsolete. Now, people use them as planters or to store recycling bins, but they are concrete monuments to a time when heating your house required a workout. Number 4, the pulley maid. This is my absolute favorite. I want one. I am going to install one. It's called a pulley maid, or a Sheila maid, or a creel. It's a drying rack, but it's on the ceiling. Picture this, wooden slats held together by cast iron frames connected to a rope and pulley system. You lower it down, hang your wet laundry on it, and then hoist it back up to the ceiling. Why is this genius? 2 reasons. 1, physics. Heat rises, the warmest air in your house is trapped against the ceiling. By pulling the clothes up, you are putting them in the prime drying zone without using a single watt of electricity. 2, space. British kitchens can be cozy, and by cozy, I mean tiny. If you have a drying rack on the floor, you can't walk. Put it on the ceiling, you have your floor back. These vanished when the tumble dryer became a status symbol in the 80s. But here's the kicker. Electricity is getting expensive. Tumble dryers ruin your clothes. The pulley maid is making a comeback, and honestly, it looks so rustic and chic. In the US, we'd probably call it an artisanal ceiling suspension system and charge $500 for it. Here, it was just standard kit for 100 years. Number 5, textured glass internal doors. If you walk into a house that hasn't been renovated since 1975, you will see doors with glass panels that look like they're made of frozen amber or rippled water. This is textured glass, and it was everywhere. I used to think this was just an ugly 70s trend, but then I realized the architectural necessity. British homes, especially Victorian terraces, can be dark. They are often deep and narrow. If you put a solid wood door on the living room, the hallway becomes a cave. Textured glass let the light borrow its way through the house. It diffused the light from the sunny front room into the dark corridor, but, and this is the key, it kept your privacy. You could see a shape moving, but you couldn't see if someone was picking their nose. It vanished because of safety regulations. That old glass was basically crystallized sugar. If you slammed the door too hard, it would shatter into jagged shards of death. Modern safety glass is boring and flat, or we just use solid doors and rely on electric lights. But there was something so cozy about seeing the warm orange glow of a lamp coming through that rippled amber glass on a rainy Tuesday night. Number 6, the night vent. British people have a pathological obsession with fresh air. It doesn't matter if it's 30 degrees Fahrenheit outside, someone will say, it's a bit stuffy, and open a window. This cultural quirk gave birth to the night vent. Look at the top of an old window frame. You'll see a tiny separate little window pane, maybe 4 inches high, with its own independent handle. This allowed you to lock the main window tight, so burglars couldn't get in, but leave this tiny sliver of glass open at the top. It meant you could sleep with a freezing draft hitting your forehead, which apparently is the secret to British resilience. Modern windows, the plastic up PVC ones, have trickle vents, which are these ugly little plastic grills. They do the same job, but they have no soul. The night vent was an engineering solution to a cultural demand, the need to be safe from crime but exposed to the elements simultaneously. Only the British could invent a window specifically designed to be open and closed at the same time. Number 7, the back boiler. Okay, this is some James Bond level stuff. In many American homes, we have a furnace in the basement or a utility closet. In Britain, for the longest time, the boiler was hiding in plain sight. It was called a back boiler, and it lived literally behind the fireplace in the living room. You'd have a gas fire on the front keeping you warm, and behind it, a heat exchanger was stealing that heat to warm up the water for your radiators and taps. It was incredibly space efficient. You didn't need a separate boiler room, but they were inefficient by modern standards. We're talking maybe 60 to 70% efficiency, whereas modern boilers are 90% plus. In 2005, the UK government actually changed building regulations to basically outlaw installing new standard efficiency back boilers. They killed it to save the planet, which I respect, but I love the idea that your fireplace was actually the engine room of your entire house. Now, everyone has these white metal boxes on their kitchen walls that hum aggressively. It's just not as romantic. Number 8, the immersion heater and the red light of doom. If you grew up in the UK in the 80s, you have trauma associated with a small red neon light on a switch on the wall. This is the immersion heater switch. So the immersion heater is basically a giant electric kettle element inside the hot water tank. It was usually a backup for when the boiler wasn't running. But electricity is expensive here, like really expensive. Leaving the immersion heater on was considered a financial crime in most households. It was the quickest way to bankrupt a family in 1985. That little red light glowing on the wall was like the eye of Sauron. It meant money was burning. Fathers across the nation developed a sixth sense for when that switch was flipped. You'd hear a shout from downstairs, "Woo! Left the immersion on." It was a tool of discipline. It taught a generation about resource management. Now, with automatic boilers and smart thermostats, we've lost that visceral connection between a glowing red light and our bank account balance. Number 9, the cold slab and the larder. Before refrigerators were affordable, and they weren't common here until much later than in the US, British houses had a larder or a pantry. But the genius part was the cold slab. This was a thick shelf made of marble, slate, or stone. Stone has high thermal mass, meaning it stays cold. You would place your butter, your milk, your cheese, and your meat directly on this stone slab. The larder was usually positioned on the north side of the house, no direct sun, and had an air brick to the outside to let cold air circulate. It was a natural, electricity-free refrigerator. When fridges arrived, everyone ripped these out. They smashed the marble slabs and put in cabinets made of chipboard. And the irony? Now, in high-end million-pound kitchens, what do people want? A walk-in pantry with a marble shelf? We went full circle. We realized that keeping cheese at room temperature is actually better, and we spent 40 years relying on Freon and electricity when a piece of cold rock was doing a perfectly good job. Number 10, the wall-mounted can opener. This sounds mundane, but stick with me. In every grandmother's kitchen in the UK, there was a strange geometric device screwed into the wall or the side of a cupboard. It looked like a torture device for robots. It was the wall-mounted can opener. In the US, we have electric ones on the counter. In the UK, they had these manual, crank-operated beasts, and they were indestructible. I'm talking cast iron and hardened steel. You could open a tank with these things. They vanished because of ring pulls. Cans changed. We got lazy. We bought cheap handheld openers that break every 6 months. But there was something so satisfying about the mechanics of the wall-mounted opener. It held the can for you. It locked in. It was a permanent fixture, a statement that said, "I will be eating beans in this house for the next 30 years. Number 11, the milk cupboard. I learnt about this one from a friend in Manchester. She has a tiny wooden door, about 10 inches high, built into the brickwork next to her back door. It's a milk cupboard. For Americans, the concept of the milkman is kinda retro 1950s suburbia. In the UK, it was a vital infrastructure until pretty recently. The milkman would come at like 4 a.m. If he left the glass bottles on the step, birds, specifically blue tits, would peck through the foil lids to get the cream, or the sun would spoil it, or a cat would knock it over. So builders installed a specific little cubby hole in the wall. The milkman puts the bottles in from the outside. And get this, some of them had a door on the inside too. You could open a hatch in your kitchen and grab the milk without even putting on your slippers. Supermarkets killed the milkman, and plastic jugs killed the glass bottle. But think about the sustainability. We had a circular economy, glass bottles delivered, returned, washed, and reused, and a dedicated architectural feature to support it. Now we just have an ocean full of plastic. The milk cupboard was ahead of its time. Number 12, picture rails. In American rentals, you're terrified to put a nail in the wall because you'll lose your deposit. In Victorian and Edwardian British homes, they solved this with the picture rail. This is a strip of wood moulding that runs around the room, usually about a foot below the ceiling. It wasn't just for decoration. You bought these S-shaped hooks that looped over the rail, and you hung your art from wires attached to the hooks. You could move your art left, right, up, down, redecorate the whole room without making a single hole in the plaster. And given that old plaster in the UK is made of lime and horsehair and crumbles, if you look at it wrong, this was essential. They vanished because of minimalism. In the 60s and 70s, people wanted clean lines. They ripped the rails off, skimmed the walls flat, and started drilling holes. Now people are paying carpenters a fortune to reinstall them because they realized, wait, putting holes in my wall is stupid. Number 13, Bakelite toggle switches. Okay, this is a sensory thing. Modern light switches in the UK are these flat white plastic rockers. They go click, they're fine. But go into an unrenovated 1930s house and you find Bakelite. Bakelite was the first synthetic plastic, and it's heavy, brittle, and brown. The switches were these round domes with a little toggle stick sticking out. When you flipped a Bakelite switch, it made the most satisfying deep funk sound you have ever heard. It felt mechanical. It felt deliberate. You weren't just turning on a light, you were completing a circuit. They vanished because of wiring regulations, and, well, brown plastic isn't exactly live, laugh, love aesthetic. But there is a huge market for vintage ones now. We lost the tactile joy of the home. Everything now feels smooth, silent, and disposable. Those switches were built to survive the Blitz, and they usually did. Number 14, the box room. This is a term that confuses every American, the box room. In the US, a room has to be a certain size to legally be a bedroom. In the UK, if you can fit a hamster cage in it, it's a bedroom. The box room is usually the third bedroom, situated over the staircase. Because the stairs eat into the floor plan, this room usually has a weird bulkhead in the floor or is just barely 6 feet wide. Historically, it was for storing boxes, trunks, and luggage, but as housing got more expensive, it became the kids' room. I feel like the box room is an endangered species, not because the rooms are gone, but because of how we use them. We turn them into home offices or walk-in closets now. But for decades, this tiny, awkward room shaped the character of millions of British siblings. It was the short straw. If you got the box room, you knew your place in the family hierarchy. It was a masterclass in space efficiency, using every square inch of the footprint, even the bit above the stairs. Number 15. The telephone nook. Finally, number 15. This is pure nostalgia. Before we all had supercomputers in our pockets, a house had one phone. And that phone was a heavy, beige, plastic brick attached to the wall with a curly cord. Because the phone was shared and expensive, it had its own shrine. The telephone nook. Often under the stairs or in the hallway, this was a built-in shelf, sometimes with a little seat, specifically designed for the landline. It usually had a notepad, a pen that didn't work, and the yellow pages, which was basically Google in book form. It vanished because of cordless phones in the 90s. We started walking around the kitchen while talking, then mobiles came, and the landline died entirely. But I missed the location of communication. When the phone rang, it was an event. You had to go to the nook. You sat down. You had a conversation. Now, we answer calls on the toilet. The telephone nook represented a time when communication was intentional, stationary, and dignified. So, looking at this list, I realized something. We didn't just lose features. We lost a way of living. We traded durability for convenience. We traded the coal bunker's physical connection to heat for a digital thermostat. We traded the social boundary of the serving hatch for the chaos of open plan. We traded the passive, free energy of the airing cupboard for expensive electric dryers. I'm not saying we should go back to shoveling coal. My manicure could not handle it, but there is a genius in these old British designs that we should learn from. They worked with the house, not against it. They respected physics, they respected privacy, and they respected resources. I'm currently trying to convince my landlord to let me install a pulley maid. He thinks I'm crazy. But when my energy bill comes in lower than his next winter, we'll see who's laughing. Let me know in the comments. Do you remember any of these? Did you grow up with a red light of doom? Do you still have a serving hatch? I want to hear all your stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into British culture from your favorite confused American. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!